our Chai Mitzvah tutorial on gratitude, Kafuihatov. The expression Kafuihatov, gratitude, literally means noticing or recognizing the good. We notice that good deeds are done on our behalf. We appreciate them. And as we begin to appreciate and absorb them, they become a part of our memory. We come to understand that we are part of a greater web of life, a web of understanding, caring, and concern for others in our immediate world, as well as in our larger circles of engagement and the universe itself. We hope to pay the favor forward. We think about how we can restore kindness to others and give kindness and return kind acts to other people when we have received them. We do acts of kindness, perhaps in memory or in honor of others, which is a lovely way to express our honoring of someone and the legacy that they may have left us. In that way, memory and a sense of gratitude and loving kindness become interconnected midot. We're going to look at the midah of Kafuihatov, recognizing or noticing the good. And we begin our exploration with a text and biblical passages from the story of Joseph. So there is a backstory to Joseph, which probably many of the participants will know, that he is falsely imprisoned in Egypt after being sold off into slavery by his brothers, and that he is a skilled dream interpreter. He's actually a third-generation dream interpreter, and he uses that skill to assist two fellow prisoners, the Pharaoh's former cupbearer and his chief baker. And as we get to know Joseph better and his personality develops throughout the stories in the Torah, we see how his skill as a dream interpreter helps the people of Egypt and Pharaoh. And so we read text 1. Then the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph. Joseph said to him, "In 3 days, Pharaoh will pardon you and restore you to your post. But think of me when all is well with you again, and do me the kindness of mentioning me to Pharaoh, so as to free me from this place." On the 3rd day, his birthday, Pharaoh made a banquet for all of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he impaled, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not think of Joseph. He forgot him. These texts both come from Genesis chapter 40. As we look at the conversation questions, we really have a wonderful opportunity to explore some interesting thoughts. We open with a general question: what was Joseph's good deed for which he requested Kafuihatov, for which he requested that the good be remembered? And was that a reasonable request that he made when he asked, "Would you remember me? Remember me to Pharaoh?" Why would the cupbearer forget Joseph? That discussion is a very, very enlightening one. We find that there are a lot of responses that people will give in a large group discussion. And people will discuss situations in which they have either forgotten to repay a favor or forgotten the person who has done the favor. That once the act of kindness is done, they so quickly move on to the next thing that the person's act is not appreciated. The question asks, what can you learn from Joseph and the cupbearer about the relevance and significance of this midah in your own life? If we take a moment in large group discussion to explore these situations in which we ourselves have forgotten or been the one forgotten by someone else, we can really learn a lot and share a lot amongst each other. The second question, to whom in your life do you owe a debt of gratitude? And how have you or how might you have expressed it? Is a wonderful one for chevruta or small group discussion, and then coming back to share with the large group. Generally, this produces many insights on the part of participants, which they are eager to share once they come back into a large group setting. Our next text talks about two passages, both from the book of Exodus, that refer to the first of the plagues that are brought upon Egypt. We read, "As the Eternal said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, over their streams, and over their pools, and over their ponds of water, that they may become blood. And the Eternal said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch forth your hand with your rod over the rivers, the canals, and over the pools, and cause the frogs to come up upon the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt." Both of these texts appear in the book of Exodus. As we move forward, we are asked to consider some interesting things. The first asks whom does God ask to bring these plagues upon the water? And I would ask, and it's an interesting discussion, which oftentimes people don't know the answer to. Do you have any ideas as to why Aaron would be asked to do this and not Moses? And to note that these are the only two plagues brought by Aaron. It is interesting to note that the reason that we come up with, and that the text, the midrash on this text in Exodus tells us by the commentator Rashi, as that the plagues were brought through the rod of Aaron because Moses owed his life when he was a baby in the basket to the river. And so our text suggests that goodness extends even to inanimate objects, that we owe debts of gratitude to objects that are not necessarily living ones, in the sense that we consider humans or animals to be living ones. If we look at this, the question begs remembering, have you ever been saved by an inanimate object as Moses was? And for what inanimate objects in your own life do you have or might you cultivate a Kafuihatov, a gratitude practice? We're told if you already bless your food before or after you eat, that this might be considered a gratitude practice. Generally, I take a lot of time to explore this last piece in the parentheses. If you already bless your food before or after you eat, how might you deepen this practice? Because I think that it links into the process of intentional eating and gratitude for food, that we can have a very deep and meaningful discussion, both in a large group as well as a small one discussing. In terms of have you ever been saved by an inanimate object, I generally share with my group a true story that happened to me, which was that I was once driving to Shabbat morning services after a snowstorm that had been cleared from the roads. When I hit a particular point in my travels, my car hit a patch of ice, and try as I might, I could not spin into or out of the curve that I was on in the patch of ice. I finally put my hands up off the wheel and just said, this is in God's hands. My car spun out off the road, and I just closed my eyes. Amazingly, the car stopped, and I looked up. The windshield was covered with snow, and I couldn't see out of the car. I put the wipers on and noticed that my car had been stopped in its descent into a ditch by a berry bush that held it up. I climbed out over the hood, went out onto the road, and flagged down some assistance. This is a true story that has stuck with me, that I have shared about my process of gratitude throughout my life. The bush, an inanimate object as we would know it or think of it, saved my life. And I was eternally grateful and expressed gratitude to that berry bush. Perhaps people in your large group or in small groups sharing with their partners might talk about a gratitude practice and things in their lives that are inanimate objects for which they are grateful. Nature, things in nature, trees, rocks, bushes, things in their home that we use to help us keep our houses in order, clean and workable, are also items that we can express gratitude toward. So I think there is a lot of grist for the mill of deep discussion in this particular text. It's pointed out later on in the talking points for bullet point number 3. The opposite of gratitude or ingratitude is called Kafuihatov, literally covering over the good, as opposed to uncovering the good when we have a gratitude practice. The word for kippah, or head covering, that I wear here and that many of you might also wear in synagogue, is grammatically related to the word kafui. Something to keep in mind because it covers over our heads. Gratitude is a major practice in Judaism, and one that needs to be practiced in order to be appreciated to its fullest extent. Those who complain incessantly are considered by our faith to be sinners. Consider the Israelites when they left Egypt and complained incessantly for 40 years. Think of all the things they complained about. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They weren't happy with the food. They were worried that there was a lack of water. They were concerned that they didn't know where they were going. They had so many concerns, as we all do. Think about your own. What do you tend to complain about? And what would it take to restrain from complaints and see the cup as full or half full? I would suggest a partner or small group discussion with a rejoining into the large group setting to process our sharing with everyone. Our next text to focus on is text number 4. It is a text I particularly love. It's the blessing for bread that we recite with our meals. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamotzi lechem min ha'aretz. Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has brought forth bread from the earth. When we examine this blessing carefully and think about what is the gratitude in this blessing expressing, I wonder about the rich answers that will come up from people in the group. This is a very interesting blessing because to bless the bread that comes forth from the earth exposes a process of blessing. It's not just the bread that comes forth from the earth, because bread doesn't come out of the earth as a loaf of bread or a loaf of challah. And what is the process that we go through in order to get that end result from the process of what comes out of the earth? So what is our blessing really expressing? Perhaps more than one thing. And what does the act of blessing do for the person who offers it? In general, when we offer a blessing, it feeds our soul the way the bread from the earth feeds our body. A discussion on what blessings do we regularly recite and how could we infuse them with a greater sense of gratitude and make it a practice is a wonderful, wonderful discussion for the large group. Often we don't acknowledge all of the acts of gratitude that we receive, and how might we respond to that? Which ones tend to slip by in our lives, and how could we consider them and try to bring them back into our practice? Consider writing your own blessings, for which you do not need to know any Hebrew, and that is an important fact to stress. Often in my discussions with people on blessings, they say, but I don't know the Hebrew. To which I will respond, as an example, if you see a beautiful rainbow in the sky, might you just look up and say, thank you, God, for the gift of this beautiful rainbow. No Hebrew needed. Oftentimes people can come up with blessings and work in small groups or in pairs to write a blessing for each other, or to write a blessing for something that normally they don't acknowledge, such as our booklet says, taking a vitamin, speaking with a friend, errands that we do for others or that are done for us, or simple acts of holiness that we receive that we don't even consider. This would be an important last discussion for the large group, as well as a very important discussion for small groups. We turn next to the practices section of the booklet. This has some wonderful, wonderful suggestions for practices we could engage in to build on our gratitude work. One of them suggests keeping a journal. Before you go to sleep each night, jot down some things that you are grateful for, as well as some of the people to whom you owe a debt of gratitude. Friends, relatives, people you don't know as well, store clerks, repair people, the mailman. And then the next day, be sure to thank at least one of the people on your list. Consider ways you might do that. Verbal thank yous, handwritten notes, an email, a small gift, or a way to reciprocate, or a donation made in that person's honor. All wonderful ways for the person receiving to feel so appreciated by you. Another way to keep a gratitude journal is one I particularly resonate with, which is to take one photograph each day of something for which you are grateful, and then turn them into a collage or review them at the end of each week before Shabbat. As an avid photographer, this is something that I practice as part of my gratitude practice. I take a photo journal. I take a photo every day of something usually outside my home, but often inside my home, that I am grateful for. I may post it on Facebook, share it with my friends and family, and write about it as well. I do review them at the end of the week before Shabbat, and it gives me great pleasure to look at the things I've come in contact with that have entered my world, for which I am so grateful. Further down in the practices, we are told it's wonderful to wake up one's body by chanting Modeh or Modah Ani, depending if you're a male or female, Modeh or Modah Ani Lefanecha, when we first wake up in the morning, because we are grateful for a huge gift, that of having our soul restored to us anew in the new day. Many different ways for this prayer to be recited. We do it with our community as a chant, and have taught our community to do the Modeh Ani chant. But it's done as a song as well, and there are many different versions on YouTube that you can access to learn new melodies for this. I find the next practice one that is very, very interesting and very unique. It says there's actually a complaint fast, a refrain from fast from complaining by taking a day, and in Yiddish, it's called ta'anit krechten. So when you krecht, you complain. My grandmother used to always tell me that in Yiddish. And here's how you keep this fast. You stop complaining for 24 hours or more. And for any slip-ups, instead of putting a nickel in the jar, you donate money to tzedakah for any slip-ups, or counter any comment, call, or letter of complaint with something that is a praise or a positive expression of gratitude about someone instead. Wishing you much luck with your gratitude practice and building your gratitude practice.